Very good day to all of you. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to host Professor Thomas Berger from Vienna, Austria, who is a very well-known leading figure in multiple sclerosis and neurology for that matter. On behalf of World Federation Neurology YouTube channel, World Brain Day team, and social media team, very good day to you. Thank you for taking our invitation and joining us today despite your busy schedule.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big pleasure talking with you across the globe. So we are exact antipodes at the moment.
Absolutely.
From Austria to Australia, there's sometimes a mix-up on that.
Correct.
But, so this is very nice that we have this chat on this Sunday noon.
Absolutely. Now, let's go back to your much younger days. Tell us, our viewers, how was the Professor Thomas Berger made? What was the journey from your high school days to now? Who inspired you? And take us through the journey of becoming you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, you know, I always thought and tried to recall my former times to ask myself, how did the various crossings influence and the possibilities? And to be honest, and I think this is something which is very typical for most of us, is that a lot of things happen by chance. And so you could flip the coin and say, turn left or turn right. And obviously it was the right decision at this given time point. To be honest, I found in an old box old pictures when I think I was a really child and young boy at the age of 6, and they continued up to I think 10 or so. And what was interesting for me, I always found doctor photos. So obviously there was a strong interest, you know. Some were playing, I don't know, cowboy and whatever, and I was obviously having a lot of fun with doctor plays. Mm-hmm. So, but this is more a joke. The true interest was raised during high school, and especially for biology. And you know, we had at that time there was a kind of experimental school model where you could choose certain topics and certain exams for your high school final exams. And I decided for biology, and I think I was extremely well prepared because I had a focus on nervous system at that time point. So this was, of course, not only to me an enigma, but even more to my teachers. So I had a very easy task because nobody understood what I was talking about in detail about the nervous system. And so this was something which I guess was a very strong belief that I want to study medicine. But at the given time point, it was not that interest in neurology. To be honest, I wanted to get into tropical medicine. And I was also in one of the European famous tropical medicine institutes in Hamburg in Germany. But for a longer time. But when I returned to Vienna, and of course Vienna is not that central place for tropical medicine, they asked me, where have you been? And I've said, yes, I've been in Hamburg. And so at that time, the professor in Wien said, oops, that's, you know, they are so theoretical, they don't have any practical experiences, right. Which was definitely not true, because the so-called Harbor Hospital in Hamburg was one of the largest hospital dedicated to tropical medicine. But nevertheless, it was not a mistake, because I learned a lot, and it was at the time when the HIV pandemic swapped and came to us. And of course, there were a lot of anxieties, and you may also recall this. It was similar to what we experienced with the Corona pandemic. You know, people did not know details. They were frightened to get infected, you know, just by greeting from distance. People with HIV were isolated and also stigmatized, especially because there were certain social groups, you know, people with various various risk factors. So there was a dramatic situation, and at that time in the Tropical Institute in Hamburg, those people with HIV and AIDS were taken care of because no other hospitals took over the duty. So it was, you know, another lesson, or one of my most impressive lessons, despite the fact that I did not go on in neurology, in tropical medicine. So what happened after graduation at medical school in Vienna, again, a thing what happened by chance, because to be honest, because of my interest in tropical medicine, I wanted to go to South Africa because we had the chance for, there was a contract and a cooperation between Austria and the South African Medical Association to give young Austrian, immediately after the graduation, young doctors the chance to start their internship, which was also accepted in Vienna, in Austria. So we applied for our residency in South Africa, and I remember very well. I wanted, of course, to go to very nice places at the seaside or something like that. But I was located to Pretoria, and I said, no, I don't want to go to Pretoria. And the other thing was, I had a place at the thoracic surgery, and I never wanted to go to surgeon because for various reasons. So I had to skip this. And instead, there was the chance at the so-called Neurological Institute in Vienna. And for those who are not familiar with the Neurological Institute in Vienna, this is more or less the oldest neuropathological institute in the world. So it was founded before 1900, and it was also called Obersteiner, because he was one of the central light tower figures at this time point. And at the time when I joined I was interested, this was because this institute was divided in 3 divisions: neuropathology, neurochemistry, and experimental neuropathology and neuroimmunology. And this was headed by Hans Lassmann. And so I applied for all 3 positions which were available, and I got the residency at the lab from Hans Lassmann. And I remember very well when I introduced myself to him, he said to me, Thomas, what do you want to research on? Alzheimer's disease or multiple sclerosis? And I said, please, not Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
I don't know why, but probably because multiple sclerosis was more affecting young people. And I thought this is something which might raise more interest in my future research, but also clinical career.
This was which year, Thomas?
Sorry,
This was
1991.
1991.
Yeah.
1991. Right.
Yeah.
So we didn't have much in the form of therapeutics at that time for MS.
Zero.
Right.
In Austria, the first treatment for multiple sclerosis given was an interferon preparation, which we know after the seminal publications in neurology about interferon beta 1b. And I remember, I think I was the first in Austria who applied this treatment to a patient in Vienna. And, both of us were shivering. The patient, because they did not knew what he is receiving. And I, as one of the youngest residents, was chosen to inject the patient who was for this treatment admitted to the ward, because nobody knew what happens with the cytokine treatment. And I was also shivering because I did not know what happens to the patient and what I'm applying to. So this was already after my first couple of years together with Hans Lassmann in his lab, working on neuropathology and experimental neuroimmunology, and of course dedicated to multiple sclerosis. And it was right from the beginning, it was a fascinating topic and field for me, because again, to be honest, during the studies, and I don't think that dramatically changes have been happening until now, during the studies, we were not that well educated in basic, in more detailed immunology. Of course, in basic immunology, no doubt, and but these details, and Hans Lassmann, of course, forced me very quickly to get deep insights, at least theoretically, in the whole immunology and especially neuroimmunology. So it was fascinating how quickly this field was revolving. And nowadays, with looking back, we all know that, of course, neuroimmunology is not only linked to multiple sclerosis, it's more or less linked to all neurological disorders.
Everything, 100%.
Yeah, in more or less bigger or lesser extent, and whether it is causal or the more bystander effect, but it's linked to this. And I think this was very
including
strong,
COVID-19.
Including COVID-19, of course, yeah. And I think especially this COVID-19 immunology and the cytokine storm caused a lot of, let's say, I don't want to say relaxation, but at least we calmed down with the knowledge of neuroimmunology in various disorders and the mode of action of also various immune modulatory and immunosuppressive drugs. We were very quickly, and not me, myself, of course, also, but together in the consensus also with international colleagues, we were very quickly sure that we are on the right track in telling the patients never change your winning team, because there is no reason to fear that there will be specific harm in general without any common risk factors. But coming back to Hans Lassmann, you know, I think it was my best time, to be honest, because I had only to dedicate myself to research, nothing else. So it was an enormous learning phase, and of course, a enormous nice time of exclusively doing research. So it was a fantastic time. Hans Lassmann was a fantastic teacher because he's a very modest person, and this institute is a very small institute. And at that time, if you would have entered it, you would have asked, how could this happen in this global way with such a tiny institute? But what Hans Lassmann lived and also, of course, taught me, and this is relevant and valid up to today, is that cooperation is an imminent factor of research. You cannot do it in splendid isolation. You cannot do it for yourself. You need to cooperate because you also want the world to know what happens new. And the best thing, if you want to know the world, you also need to engage other world partners. So this was something I was taught by him. And the second lesson I learned, and this is also valid for me up to today, and therefore he's really one of my two important mentors, is that he always followed hypothesis-driven research. It was never mainstream. You know, sometimes mainstream research is necessary for, let's say, for colleagues who are under pressure regarding their contracts, regarding their prolongation of their position, etc. And sometimes you are driven into mainstream research. But this was something Hans Lassmann never did. He followed his idea and hypothesis. And I was extremely fascinated because in his early years, he wrote a book on experimental allergic encephalomyelitis, which is the animal model of multiple sclerosis.
Correct.
And all his ideas, he really stringently and concisely followed, have been already theoretically written in this book. So 30 years later, let's say 30 years later or so, but decades later, everybody who knew him very well could see how he followed his ideas and hypotheses. So this was a very important mentorship for me. And I think this is also something which is for a young researcher imminent if he or she follows an academic career. Because to be honest, we all need a little bit of idols or mentors, and in a way that the mentor is supporting the mentee if he or she is showing bright interest, also probably a long-lasting interest and a kind of idea. So,
Thomas,
yeah,
I'll stop you for a second. These two things that you mentioned were really critically important. I heard this story again and again from many great people, and even some of the young rising stars also. Having a mentor is a repeated story that is coming through. And the second thing is basically the networking and collaboration. I think these two things were more often than not. I heard from it from the very beginning. Some retired emeritus professors, some young rising stars. That's why I stopped you, and I just wanted to reiterate it back again for the future generations that you must find a good mentor by luck or by choice. It's a necessity. And the second thing is collaboration. And you added another thing that following the culminated hypothesis-driven research and then stick with it. Despite some of the shortcomings, eventually it might fall through. I'll get back to your story. Sorry, I disturbed you as you were rolling over. Keep going.
No, I'm very grateful that you reiterate and summarize those major 3 points, because I think they are really imminent. On the one hand, I think it is a kind of natural human behavior, because that's probably the same like in the growing up or maturation. We try to find a framework where we can match with. We need to compare, we need to see what are the borders. And of course, a mentor in a scientific setting is more or less the same. We need, what are the borders, what are the horizons, how was success also for the mentor, this pathway walked on and maintained. So I think this is very imminent. And there is one saying that a successful career starts with the successful finding of a mentor. And I think this is definitely, because this is not a scientific skill, I think this is a social skill. You find somebody who you believe, and this is, not necessarily a rich or a beautiful or a whatever, this typical success element. I think somebody who fits to your own ideas also, of course. And therefore, I think this is a very trivial saying, but it's very true. You have to find your nest and your embedding. And if you find this, and I had the luck to find it in the research activities by Hans Lassmann, and later on in my clinical development by Werner Pöwe in Innsbruck. Because after a couple of years, and this was mainly driven by, this is the university law in Austria, especially if you want to get specialized in a certain field, you need to change from a pure scientific or research group to a more clinical, because otherwise you get not an appropriate, especially clinical specialty. So as a first step, I went after some years with Hans Lassmann, I went to the neurological department in Vienna. And I think after 2 years, Werner Pöwe, who was 1995, appointed the new chair of neurology at Innsbruck Medical University. So he was following Franz Gerstenbrand. And what he was looking for, and this was, it was by chance again. I got a phone call from Werner Pöwe, and I didn't knew him, really. I got a phone call from him, and he says, here's Werner Pöwe. I want to talk to you about the situation in Innsbruck. And I said, what kind of situation? So I never thought that anything on my way going west would end from Vienna to Innsbruck, because the going west approach was, let's say, more in the UK or in the US, something like that. But at this given time point, Werner Pöwe had an extremely good idea. He engaged young neurologists with a strong interest scientifically, and they were hungry. They were hungry for establishing labs, establishing outpatient clinics with dedication to their specific interests. So what he did, he asked, or he was looking around for somebody who has neuroimmunological background. And to be honest, it was not my merit, or but there were more or less only two of us in Austria. And my best friend, or one of my best friends, who was the other neuroimmunologist, he was a little bit older than me, and he was already specialized in neurology. And he said, no, I'm not going to go to Innsbruck. But me as a resident, it was a perfect chance, which I had to grab, because during residency, getting such an offer to move to another medical university with the clear-cut goal to establish a MS clinic or a neuroimmunological outpatient clinic, and most importantly, also a research lab. So I grabbed this chance, and in 1995, I went to Innsbruck. And this was the second important step in my career, because the way how Werner Pöwe, as chair of the department, I think it was brave from him to give young residents as me this kind of portfolio, say, do your job, but do it good. And this was also done in epilepsy. It was done in multi-system atrophy. It was done in stroke. So in many fields, he, I think, as I said, was brave to engage not the old guys, but the younger ones. And this was a very successful, I think, way. And the neurological department at the Medical University in Innsbruck developed to one of the most successful academic departments in Europe. On the one hand, dealing with a lot of patients, because this is a kind of county hospital also. So you have to do routine neurological work every day from 8 till 4. And besides that, there was the idea of course, intense teaching and also intense research. And I think this was an extremely well-developed neurological department. And so Werner Pöwe is my second important mentor, with a specific emphasis on the clinical development, because he taught me that, of course, you always compare your own performance with your co-workers, especially if you grow older and get younger colleagues. You always how do you say? I find myself, or found myself, sometimes translating my own grade of activity to the co-workers, and this is not. I think this is not correct, because nobody is comparable in this way, and everybody should develop depending on his own personality. And the second thing what Werner Pöwe taught me and us was, you can do also mistakes. Because if we want to have an innovative research scientific climate or atmosphere, you need to be allowed to do mistakes, because otherwise we are back again in this mainstream research. We are not eager doing new things which might fail or also be probably a mistake. But if you have these limitations of not being allowed doing mistakes, I think you're limited in your activities. So this was a second very important point.
So Thomas, you are very fortunate to have two brilliant mentors in the science or the pure basic science aspect from Hans, and then very bold, risk-taking, the thinker in Werner. I think I can now foresee what he was seeing. He was basically taking a gamble with bright, young, eager to learn, risk-taking, hard-working bunch of people who wanted to give their best shot, testing what they learn in their labs out there. And then he basically very cleverly told you all that I want you to build world-class services in these places, but on the back of really high-quality education and research. So
Yeah,
it all makes sense. The why his group is so popular, because we can't basically read anything without contributions coming from that part of the world. That's true. Whether it is movement disorders,
yeah,
neuroimmunology, stroke,
yeah,
you have to have contributions coming from that part of the world, which is probably driven by you and your colleagues and rest of the other
yeah.
teams. That's a very excellent take-home message for our viewers also, wherever they are. Just to summarize, don't worry about the small area where you have to work with, but just keep asking questions, keep building up new hypotheses, keep testing them out. There won't be shortage of them with all this COVID-19 and long COVID and this and that. There are whole heaps of things for us to unravel. So the opportunities are everywhere, but take risks and
Right,
the see patients, but keep asking new questions, do research, do educate, and work in collaboration. It's
right,
collaboration, cooperation. That's the biggest competition. If you think
right.
that you can be a super competitor by hiding in your own little kingdom, you are going to fail.
Yes,
Nobody would know who
yeah,
you are.
right.
You just need to make connections. So that's the sort of a story of where you are today. Anything else that we missed?
No, I just wanted to briefly wrap up this whole academic career. So I was very happy in Innsbruck, clinically and from the research. I had an excellent research group. This was especially done by my twin, Markus Reindl, who is a molecular biologist running the lab. So
Mhm.
we had astonishing good thinking and one mind. The second thing, of course, it was I learned I've been 25 years in Innsbruck,
Mhm.
so I really enjoyed my MS clinic there. I had, I knew patients for nearly 30 years, which is a very intimate relationship. So you know each other very well, and you had a very confidential and trusty relation. So what I wanted to say is I had no urgent need to leave Innsbruck.
Mhm.
But then there was this chance, and in Austria, there are not too much medical universities. There are three old medical universities and a couple of new ones. The old are in Vienna, Innsbruck, and Graz. The new ones are in Salzburg and in Linz. So if you have the chance to get a chair of a department in one of these old neurological departments and medical universities, I think you have to grab it. And I thought that, I'm now 8 years ahead from my retirement, which probably nobody recognizes, but it is the fact. So I thought it would be a challenging, interesting, demanding, but also extremely joyful work
Rewarding.
to go to Vienna, and I was happy that I was appointed 2.5 years ago, and this is a fantastic team. I'm now heading in Vienna, a large, fantastic team. Um, by the way, also by chance, another chance, which was not intended and also not foreseen, that this former Institute of Neurology, where I started my career, was for whatever reason and in a very bad atmosphere on the way to get atomized, split up in various groups.
Mhm.
And I was extremely opposing this idea, with the end that by 2020, this is now a division in my department.
Right,
So
right,
there is a cycle closing.
right.
And of course, it's probably not the best for the colleagues from the neuropathology and neurochemistry, but it's the best possible. And we have an extremely well cooperation. It dramatically also um, um, increased our potential, of course. So I'm extremely happy with the team, with the university, with the environment in Vienna, especially also the neuroscientific environment, which is far beyond the the medical university. So this is the way how things get in cycles back, and they close each other. So for my biography, it is a perfect setting right now.
It's the unbelievable how life goes around, isn't it?
Right.
It's sometimes you're absolutely right. Most of the things that happen to us seems to happen by chance, but you almost feel like that someone else is out there planning them for you. You never know. But anyhow, I think the bottom line is wherever you are, whatever the opportunity that you are given, you should take it from both hands and give your best shot. That's how humans have progressed. Time to time. And I have been to your department a long time back when I was part of the young neurologist groups. Our group, I think the myself and Walter Struhal, who is currently
Ah,
in Linz, we were close friends trying to rally this. We are not young anymore, but those days we were young and we were trying to get the sort of connections between young neurologists. So we came down to your department at that time, I think in the middle of the night. We had a bit of a tour. We looked at your fabulous EEG lab and some of the office spaces. I recall you have one wall with a whole lot of pictures of different consultants and others
yes.
with some sketch diagrams. I think I took some photos. They must be there in one of my desktops back home. And then I think we retreat ourselves to some sort of a pizza place and we had a little bit more fun that I'm not going to put on record right now on this talk. So we wish you all the very best. Now, the next theme that I wanted to draw your attention to is you are chairing ECTRIMS, the scientific committee meeting, which I hope that most of our viewers would join in October. I would assume that it would be virtual. And you are well aware that the one of the most powerful global organizations caring for brain health, World Federation Neurology, and equally powerful organization, Multiple Sclerosis International Federation, historically joined their hands together to run a couple of months long World Brain Day campaign with the ambitious agenda to stop multiple sclerosis. Ironically, when you began your career with hands, you had zero treatment for multiple sclerosis. Here I am chatting to you, talking about stopping multiple sclerosis. I was just read the drafting an editorial on this that I'm going to co-write with Bill Carroll. I was reading all these NIDA, NIDA 3, NIDA 4, no evidence of disease activity, which we didn't even dream long time ago when we were talking about multiple sclerosis. Absolutely amazing. How excited are you to see such a powerful campaign on offer at this point of time to spread this message and raise awareness globally?
As you already said, I think multiple sclerosis is per se a success story. But to be honest, we have a lot of success stories in neurology, because neurology, sorry that I'm saying this in this way, is a very sexy field, yeah? Because it's a very revolving, a lot of insights, a lot of tools. We went from therapeutic nihilistic views, like in multiple sclerosis, as I experienced also in the mid of the 90s, moving from chronic diseases where there was depression also among the physicians. We can only watch the natural history, nothing doing specific to the people. Patients were stigmatized because of this bad diagnosis. So this has all changed, and this has changed dramatically. Nevertheless, success does not prevent you from awareness. And I know this is not very a medical or academic view, but you have to, like in other brands, where everybody knows this brand across the world, from any desert to any Arctic area, everybody knows the brand. But you have to keep the brand up in the mind. And therefore, despite the success we experienced over the last 2.5 decades in multiple sclerosis, we need to increase and to continue and sustain the awareness, because despite also all or a lot of success, The World Brain Day, which now is dedicated to multiple sclerosis, is a global activity. And we have to admit and also to face that not in every country, even in Europe, in every country, the condition, the situation, but also the possibilities are the same among MS patients. So therefore, it's easy to sit in Austria or in Central Europe and saying, what is success? And we can treat whatever we like to our patients. But if we compare 300 kilometers more south, which is still Europe, the situation is completely different. So I think, therefore, no doubt, we have to raise further awareness. And I think I'm extremely grateful also that the World Federation chose the topic MS, despite the fact that MS is not a very popular disease like Parkinson's or any neurodegeneration or stroke, but it is an extremely important model disorder. From the neuroimmunological point of view, we were discussing this, that a lot of insights which were looked at under the umbrella of MS turned to be important also for other disorders. And the second point, it is a disease of the young adults, mainly the young adults. So a lot of other demands arise along with this disease as compared to a disease like, I don't know, Parkinson's or stroke, which appears mostly in the elderly population. So there is a need, and therefore I'm very grateful that you are taking care of this on the World Brain Day.
I think you summarized the story very nicely. I totally agree, and we should never forget. Yes, definitely, multiple sclerosis story is probably one of the most successful stories in neurology. You're absolutely right. We made a lot of headway. None of us, neither you or me, thought when we were a young medical student, we would revascularize ischemic brain and we would let those folks go home independently. That was never in our dreams. We didn't dream that we would have fabulous MRI scans for us to look in front of patients and take them through when we were young medical students. It was nihilistic at that time. But multiple sclerosis and treatment almost melting away those MRI lesions, almost taking away disability to zero, almost keeping cognitive reserves almost at bay with very powerful therapeutic armamentarium, bringing the basic science and clinical things, as you very nicely pointed out, from Hans' era to Werner era, and now to the bedside, is a telling, winning story. That said, we should never forget 2/3 of the world or 70% of the world can't access early diagnosis, can't access high quality treatment. I think we as neurologists, we should advocate, just like World Health Organization bringing Covishield vaccine to vaccinate whole global population, the majority of them, so that we can come out of this crazy pandemic eventually. I think there's nothing to lose by we putting our forces together and remind World Health Organization, as far as we are concerned, we want to promote brain health. We are the human family. We are all interconnected, whether it is Austria, Australia, Africa, Asia. We all care for each other's. Let's see what we can do to make these drugs available. Let's see what we can do to have a generic form of some of these medications, not going through a sky rising cost, as we saw from that neurology paper a few years back.
Yeah.
So these sort of advocacy campaigns are necessary. That's why both of us should encourage our colleagues, patients, families, other media, the friends, to help us to spread the word out. As I said to you before this interview go on to record, we are very keen to see minimum of 2.8 million posts in every kind of media, whether it is Facebook, Twitter, the LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, whatever the thing that you are familiar with, just post something promoting World Brain Day and hashtag stop multiple sclerosis. As you are probably aware, the WFN, our team has created a beautiful collection of material which we put to the World Brain Day Toolbox that is freely available to anybody anywhere in the world. We have no problem anyone translating them to their language as long as they promote brain health and they promote our ambitious campaign, Stop Multiple Sclerosis. Last question, I think you already answered this question a lot, is what is your final message to youngsters that are out there, whether they are high school students, medical students, general medicine trainees contemplating trying to do neurology, or neurology trainees? So you already mentioned that neurology is such a sexy subject. It is indeed the queen of internal medicine, but I would like to hear it from you.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So I think that the developments in neurology over the past decades are such astonishing and extremely insightful, and at the end of the day, extremely helpful to our patients. And we are not at the end. I think we have still a lot of capacities to get more insight in the pathogenesis, to elaborate and work on more, let's say, precise treatment tools, but also precise tools on the prognosis of various neurological disorders, so that we are, I think, on an extremely well track, and it's still a highly attractive and fascinating topic. I think a lot of young colleagues are a little bit of neurophobic. This may have to do with the complexity of our brain and everything which is linked to our brain. You know, you can contemplate on the brain up to very philosophical issues. You can contemplate along with our brain a lot in deep medicine, artificial intelligence, so in social behavior, in whatever. So this all is neurology.
And I think completely agree. When I was in Vienna, I think I spent a couple of days in Sigmund Freud Museum. My wife is a psychiatrist, and I repeatedly tell her that she works in a different academic hospital to mine. But when we talk to each other for hospital-related matters, I always tell her that everything that is happening to our brain is organic, whether we categorize them as psychiatry or not. Right, the reason that I spend a lot of time in Sigmund Freud Museum is he was one of the key person who was behind breaking psychiatry and neurology away. And he began his career as a neurologist. If I remember correctly, isn't that true? That,
yes, and he was dealing first with neurological issues, and he also went to Jean-Martin Charcot to Paris at the Salpêtrière to learn especially neuropathology, because at that time, of course, everybody who was interested in neuroscience was also very interested in neuropathology, to get this idea where are the things located, not only disease, but also behavior or attitudes. So he was also, and there are some translations from Charcot's lessons or teachings in German by Sigmund Freud.
Mm-hmm. So the what I was trying to come at is you were mentioning everything that we do as humans. They are actually neurology. The mental health, they come from the brain, not from your foot or heart. And our behavior in this sort of a pandemic, everything is related to brain health. So our youngsters should not think anything else other than brain. Last, the question, Thomas. I know that you have been working very hard to come to where you are today. You took us through your life journey a little bit over last 50 minutes or so. But tell us how you spend outside medicine, outside neurology. What do you do when you get some sort of a break? What do you enjoy most other than brain-related matters and MS?
To be honest, there are two things important to me, or I believe they are important to me. First of all, I'm a so-called rapid cycler. So if I'm off work, I'm immediately in my private environment, be it on holiday leave or so. So I don't have a very long time to accommodate to get relaxation or chilling. So this is something I think it's an advantage for me. The second thing is what I'm doing a lot. As I told you, I've been living in Innsbruck for 25 years. So this is a mountain area. So there is a very strong group pressure to do outside activities, be
Right.
skiing in the winter or mountain biking in the summer. So you can't escape. Yes, all of your friends are doing this. So you're forced to do this. So I'm not a very extensive, I'm not extensively doing sports, but I like very much cycling, be it mountain biking or so, and I like skiing in wintertime. But
so you're very much close to nature, basically.
Yes, I like this very much. I have to be honest, I'm not a very extensive hiker. I like to see the mountains, and I'm very admiring the mountains but from the valley, not from the top. So I don't have a need to go there. But my really relaxation is reading. I'm a bibliophilic person. So I'm not only interested in reading, I'm also collecting books. And this is something which is allowing me, first of all, two things. The first, I never will get bored on myself, despite I have a great family with two lovely daughters. But I never will have the fear that I will be bored on my own, because I always have my books. The second point is, with all this dedication professionally, scientifically, clinically, administrative, university, academic, regional, over-regional, whatever, this could fill 48 hours a day.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling.
Yes. But I think with this knowledge and with this, and of course, the self-reflection on this is very important, but you need to have another sort of interest which is beyond this professional interest. And it also opens new ideas. It also forms, let's say, your philosophy and your team working and your leadership. So it is also the interest for new things. And these are my two major activities. Apart from what I'm very strongly missing is traveling at the moment, because I love to travel, which was mainly due to business reasons, and I was traveling across the globe in a very intense way, and I have a lot of friends, lovely people in various countries, opening a lot of new horizons to me, because the best is to learn by doing and not only by reading. And this is something I'm missing at the moment. Yeah.
Let's hope, Thomas, as the two of us connected with each other's, although we struggled a fair bit over the last 2 weeks or so to make time, I think the so-called new world has given us some new opportunities, and we now probably write more than what we used to be, because we are not traveling too much, and we are connecting with more people virtually than we could before. And hopefully what we learn as wise humans now would help us to build an even better world once we come out of the other end. I think one of the greatest thing that has come out of this pandemic is, every time when I talk to somebody purely for this World Brain Day, I hear some amazing, extraordinary stories from people. It just reminds me how clever we human beings are and how extraordinary we human beings are. We don't get to see that through common news, because no good news make news. It's only bad news that gets to news channels, whether it is this channel or that channel. But the scientific community is battling this single enemy together. The vaccine story is quite a success. So let's hope that this would be a success story, just like MS, as we come out of the other end with what we rapid and fast learning now.
I agree, and I would also like to summarize this pandemic 14 months right now in my way, because the one thing is 2 lessons we learned apart from the pure scientific or epidemiological point is, the first thing is, despite all the rigidity among humans, be it politically, religiously, personally, we have a high potential for flexibility and adaptiveness, which was definitely proven in the last 14 months. So we can, if we will, and if we want. That's the one lesson. And the second lesson, what I learned, and I think this fits very well, also this campaign to the global awareness, to sharing probably a better world in this way, is that despite the social distancing, the physical distancing, I have the feeling that we stick more together, which is also a matter of fact. In the time of crisis, people crowd more and stick together. And this is something we learned. The way how we were joining together and delivering joint efforts with one voice has dramatically increased in the last 40 months. So this is a big gain and a big advantage. So despite all the drama about this pandemic and what happened to all the people directly or indirectly engaged, it also covers my optimism, because I always say it can't be so bad that there's nothing we can learn about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a very nice way to end this long conversation with a positive note. I think what you said about the togetherness and being together is a very nice story that is worth the telling. I remember as a very young kid growing up in rural Sri Lanka, we were taught a small folk tale. The folk tale was about birds. There was the flock of birds who were always together. They were led by a leader who told them that as long as we are together, it is harder for hunters to get us. And the main hunter who challenged his fellow hunters that he would somehow get these birds, he tried to make the best possible net and managed to cover this whole flock at once. But the leader was there at that time, and he said to the rest of the others, don't worry about this. Although individually we are small, together we are stronger. And when I count up to 3, let's put the biggest strength that you can put to your wings and fly away with the net. So they managed to fly away with the nest. I think the story goes on to say that there was a bit of a split in this flock, and that was the only time that the one of the hunters managed to capture some. Right. So the moral of the story is stay together, then you can't go wrong.
Right.
Thank you so much, Thomas. We wish you all the very best and our sincere gratitude to giving your valuable time on behalf of our World Brain Day team and social media team to share your story with our viewers. And we look forward to seeing you eventually physically, but at least virtually throughout the campaign.
Definitely, yes.
Take care.
So, thank you very much, and have a good Sunday in Australia, and I will enjoy it in Austria.
Excellent. You too. Take care.